In 1988, Arnold Schwarzenegger flew to Moscow to walk across Red Square as the valiant Soviet police captain Ivan Danko.
It's a very unusual role for me. I play a Russian police officer. We filmed in Moscow, right on Red Square. We didn't have a film crew like in Hollywood. No sets, no cameramen, no assistants, nothing.
No one even realized we were making a film with just one camera.
Right now we will find out who Iron Arnie met in Moscow, what Podbyrin is made of, who Gumby is, a cockroach, a beetle or a Spider-Man, how many understudies Schwarzenegger has and what bus races hide. Since the premiere of the Cimarron Aliens in 1986, Walter Hill is the director, writer and producer who had a hand in this sci-fi franchise. And one of those who is very good at not only horror films, but also action films, before turning the comic strip, Tales from the Crypt, into a popular TV series. He wanted to make a buddy cop film, casting Arnold Schwarzenegger in the lead role. In '87 Arnold loved and honored. He was even given a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And here and such an unusual role with a multi-million-dollar fee appeared. After studying just the outline of the script, Schwarzenegger agreed.
Walter Hill is one of the great directors. He writes great scripts and can work well with actors. I've been watching his films for 10 years now, and I want him to make a film starring me.
You've achieved incredibly great success and recognition in society, and you know firsthand what it means to be an outsider in a foreign country. Did this somehow reflect in your work on the role of the Moscow cop? Did it help you understand your character better?
Yeah, I think it helped a little bit. But still, the films helped me the most. I watched a lot of different films. There were Russian films, American films about Russians. I also watched this old film with Greta Garbo. It's a very, very old film called Ninotchka.
Yeah, it's from 1939.
I've watched it many, many times.
Сколько это стоит?
2000 франков.
В неделю?
В день.
Знаете, сколько стоит корова?
Корова?
2000 франков. Прожив здесь неделю, я обойдусь русскому народу в 7 коров. Кто я такая, чтобы обойтись в 7 коров?
Walter also gave me a lot of things to read. Then I started studying Russian, learning all my lines in Russian and everything. Of course, it all helped me a lot. This practice is very useful when you're creating the image of your character. And if you want to play well, you have to use everything you can, learn the language, the culture, a little bit of everything. And then everything will work out.
Your character is incredibly cool. But how did you keep such a stone-faced calm throughout the film? Belushi's always teasing you. Did you enjoy working with him?
Yeah, it was fascinating. James is a comedic actor. He plays to the audience. He's always talking and talking and talking and talking. He's great at improvisation. You have to be very attentive and focused at all times, because he twists every phrase, changes words, pauses anywhere, or will say something not according to the script at all. I could barely keep a smile off my face. I had to keep myself from laughing, and he'd make jokes all the time. That's how we worked.
If you look closely, you can spot a stunt double somewhere in here instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger. We'll talk about him at the end of this video: the friendship, pub, the chase and the shootout, the building of the main department of internal affairs. All this is Budapest and the wonderful Hungarian architecture, but the guys still took a risk and traveled to the Soviet Union to shoot some plans in Moscow, and not somewhere, but on the Red Square.
Of course, it was interesting to film in another country. First we went to Europe and filmed in Hungary, pretending it was Russia. That's because we asked for permission to film in Russia several times, and each time we were refused, but I still really wanted there to be some, in this film, at least a few shots of the real Russia. After we finished filming in Hungary, we gathered a group of 4 people: Arnold, his makeup artist, Walter, the cameraman, and of course me. And we took a charter flight to Russia. It was such a spontaneous, unplanned flight from Budapest to Russia, and basically, we had nothing with us, just some camera and costumes. At midnight we were already in Russia. No one even realized we were making a film with just a camera, no film crew, nothing. Just 3 people. The next day we went to film. I'll never forget that scene on Red Square, where Arnold is dressed in a Soviet militia uniform, Arnold got out of the car in a military overcoat and started walking back and forth along the Kremlin. Someone from the local guard came up to him and spoke in Russian. But Arnold answered him nothing. The guy looked at us suspiciously and left. We were lucky, but we decided to hurry up and spent the whole day filming everything we wanted, so that in the morning we could quickly get on the plane and leave. Cleverly pulled it all off. We flew in. Filmed and washed out. The amazing thing is that although no one in Russia knew that we had flown here, a couple of days later somehow the information leaked out that Arnold was in Moscow. We left the hotel and we were surrounded by a crowd of thousands of guys wanting to get an autograph. We had to run away from there, because we didn't want to publicize our project.
At the press conference, Schwarzenegger flooded journalists with questions. Arnold was most interested in where in Moscow he could buy an ermine coat and how to meet the famous weightlifter Yuri Vlasov. Buying an expensive fur coat turned out to be much easier than finding a famous Soviet athlete and organizing a meeting with a Hollywood film star. The sport committee got involved and Vlasov was found. The meeting took place in the athletic club on the third floor of the House of Pioneers. Schwarzenegger admired Vlasov, and Yuri Petrovich could hardly guess in the superstar of action films, the world-famous bodybuilder, the image of a 14-year-old skinny kid with whom he met in 1961 in Austria at the World Weightlifting Championships. Then Vlasov shook hands with the youngster, wishing him strength and perseverance in training. And now, 27 years later, they were again hand in hand, standing side by side. Arnold tried out a couple of homemade simulators, took some photos as a souvenir and handed the Soviet weightlifter his photo with the caption, "To my idol, Yuri Vlasov with best wishes."
We filmed in Moscow, right on Red Square. We didn't have a film crew like in Hollywood, no sets, no cameramen, no assistants, nothing. Filming there looks much more spectacular than here. Suddenly we were surrounded by a whole crowd, about 100 guys. They were trying to talk to us, asking for autographs. I had no idea that we are so popular in this country, and that our arrival in Moscow will cause a great interest not only among the press, but also among young people. I visited a couple of discos here and I liked it, and I noticed that the Soviet discotheque is very different from the American discotheque. I've been to Russian gyms, met the great Russian weightlifter, the Olympic champion of the 60s, Yuri Vlasov. I came home with incredible impressions of Moscow and the Soviet people. Most films show us the Soviet people on the bad side, and I think this will be the first film where the Russians will be good, they will be the real heroes.
Schwarzenegger studied Russian for 3 months, and judging by the film, he managed to enrich his vocabulary by as much as 53 words. I counted. For the Russian ear, it sounded quite ridiculous, but you have to pay tribute. Arnold tried very hard.
I do not understand.
Let me make it real simple, moron. You move your ass or you give me 50, or I take my Pete Rose here and fucking mutilate your car.
Хулиганы.
That's the way it should be. No one tried to achieve perfect authenticity in faces, costumes, and even less in language. All the Russians are played by Hungarian actors, except for Oleg Vidov and Savely Kramerov.
Товарищ капитан Данко, это товарищ консул Дмитрий Степанович, а я Григорий Мазурский, ваш связной. Мы только что прилетели из Вашингтона. Демоны! Демоны!
A police captain has a KGB badge. Well, it's to scare the gangsters. You pull out that badge, pop, and they run away. Somehow they didn't run away. It didn't work this time.
Какие ваши доказательства? Cocainum.
Where did Ivan get so many order plaques? 2 orders of Kutuzov at once. Only generals and marshals get them. And the medal, for the capture of Berlin, was inherited from his father. He put it on for beauty and order.
Это что, форма для пенсии? Теперь я работаю в гражданском. В гражданском? Выглядишь как Гамби.
And here he is. Gumby is a funny humanoid plasticine doll, a character from the American animated series of the same name. This green guy flies to the moon, drives cars, and bakes pies. In short, he has fun to the fullest, and Gumby also has a loyal friend, a red horse named Pokey. A Soviet policeman in a Hollywood arms workshop has a cool new gun made, a sinister 9.2mm caliber gun of the Podbyrin system. In fact, it is a modified Israeli Desert Eagle with an extended barrel, and not some kind of moulage, but a real combat weapon. It's beautiful. Ivan Danko's meeting with Abdul Elijah was filmed in a real prison with real prisoners, each of whom received a fee for appearing in the film. It's much more profitable than hiring 100 full-time extras. And at the 58th minute, the soundtrack from Commando appears, a kind of musical cameo from James Horner. The film had a very modest budget by Hollywood standards, about $30 million. So they tried to save on everything. But not on stunts. What is only worth the chase on large 12-meter passenger buses, MC-7 Challenger. For these bus races and other action scenes in Red Heat was responsible for professional stuntman and stunt director Benny Dobbins. His stunt record includes more than 70 films, including The Running Man and Commando with Schwarzenegger. Benny barely had time to endure pneumonia, as he immediately went to snowy Austria to finish shooting the fight scene. Right on the set of The Honored Stuntman fell down heart attack. Doctors were unable to save the stuntman. All complex and dangerous stunts for Schwarzenegger performed stuntmen Peter Kent and Joel Kramer. Terminator, Predator, Remember Everything, yes, almost everywhere these guys worked with Arnold and blew for him on the screen. For the American audience, Red Heat turned out to be too sour. Cranberry. In 1989, a computer game was released, but it failed to fuel interest in the film. I remember trying to play Heat on a Spectrum. Only it looked a little different on mine. There, that's better. Downloading each level from a tape recorder is a complete bummer, so I played it a couple of times and gave up. According to legend, it was Soviet journalists in the late 80s christened the overseas blockbuster Red Heat, and the translators simply did not change the name. If the newspapers write about Heat, then let it be. Although in fact the word heat is an American slang, and it is translated as policeman or cop, so the title of the film, Red Cop or Red Policeman, is much closer to reality.
Everyone I usually play is a typical American, and this film was the first time I had the opportunity to play a character from a completely different country. It's a very unusual role for me. I play a Russian police officer, sort of a Russian version of Dirty Harry. You know, a tough cop, you know. Here it is very important to think not only about acting, but also to understand how Russian cops behave in different situations, unlike American cops, and why things happen like that. You have to study the Russian language and the culture of that country to understand who might become a police officer in the Soviet Union, and why they act this way and not that way. I studied the language, but my Russian was not perfect. I didn't speak very well, but I was good at constructing dialogues, thanks to my teachers. Playing a Soviet hero was not easy, but I made a lot of effort and did my best. This role gave me an interesting experience.
In our country in the era of VHS, Red Heat was gathering full video salons. The adventures of the brave Ivan Danko quickly became a cult comedy action film, all thanks to Schwarzenegger's impenetrable charisma, broken Russian and the pearls that Arnie gives out one after another.
I do not want to touch his ass. I want to make him talk. Easy.
No! Shit! Okay!
Soviet method is more economical.
A Russian?
Soviet.
Give it a like if you respect Schwarzenegger and tell us about your favorite moment from Red Heat in the comments.